let's discuss the state of South Dakota and moving your residency to South Dakota, because South Dakota has a pretty unique opportunity. To my knowledge, they are the only state in the U.S. that allows you to be a resident after just one day. And in order to prove residency in the state of South Dakota, you actually only need at least 1 day of bill to prove you stayed at a hotel or a campground or an RV park or something like that in the previous 12 months. So if you wanted to move your state of residency and get a driver's license in South Dakota, you actually just need to go there for at least 1 day, because they have a special provision allowing you to become a state resident of South Dakota if you are a full-time traveler. So this is really common for people who are like full-time RVers, they live in their RV full-time, or people that are like traveling nurses who work on contract maybe 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and then they move to another state and they work on a contract for a month or two. Or digital nomads who don't really live anywhere and they travel within the US or they travel abroad. And so South Dakota actually has a legal provision that allows you to become a state resident there and get a driver's license there if you've only stayed one night. You only have to prove it with a receipt from a hotel or a campground. You also need a mailing address in the state of South Dakota. We now offer a mailing address with our virtual mailbox product with businessanywhere.io. We now have an address in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And we did this exactly for our clients who are travelers, who are the digital nomads and the RVers and the traveling nurses who need this state residency for tax purposes. You need that 1 night of stay at a hotel or campground, and then you need a mailbox address. And then in order to prove that you actually have a mailbox address, the only thing you actually need to do is to show one piece of mail that's been addressed to your mailbox address in South Dakota. And then other than that, there's an affidavit you need to sign where you are verifying with the Department of Motor Vehicles in South Dakota that you're a full-time traveler, that you've stayed in this hotel or campground for 1 night, and that you have this mailing address in South Dakota where you're able to receive notices from, for example, the Department of Motor Vehicles when it's time for you to renew your driver's license, or if you get a traffic violation, they need to have a place to mail you information in the state of South Dakota. So South Dakota is a pretty unique opportunity for full-time travelers if you want to change your state of residency to a zero tax state and still have a driver's license. Generally speaking, in the U.S., you don't officially become a resident in the state until you've lived there full-time for 6 months. That's kind of a general rule in the state. So, for example, if you are a traveling nurse and you're on contract, let's say in Charlotte, North Carolina for 3 months, and then your next contract is in Knoxville, Tennessee for 3 months, and your next contract is in Louisville, Kentucky for 3 months, you would never overstay your time in that state to be considered a resident of that state. And so that would be a perfect solution for somebody like that. Or, like I mentioned, RVers. So full-time RVers that live in their motorhome year-round. They live in there full-time. There's a lot of people that are living like this now. And oftentimes full-time RVers will go live in a campground for a couple of weeks, a month, maybe 2 months at a time, and then they move on to the next location. Well, it's pretty hard for those people to have a state residency when they're constantly moving. And having a virtual mailbox, number one, helps tremendously to have a central point where you receive mail and notices and that sort of thing. But you also need to have a driver's license, and moving into South Dakota would be ideal in that situation as well.